Many years ago in Israel, a rabbi called Jacob lived. And before I start the story, I just need to do one thing. Welcome to Crow's Nest and Warwick campuses. It's good to have you with us, guys. Yeah, let's welcome them. Jacob lived in Israel, and he was a rabbi, and he loved to leave his village through the day, and he would travel into the city, and he would find himself in the synagogue. And in the synagogue, that's the place where you discuss and you debate and you discover the truths of God. And Jacob loved that nothing more in life. And on this particular day, Jacob spent way too long there, and he was so deep in discussions, discovering the truths of God, he lost track of time. And so when he rose to leave town, the sun had already set. It was well and truly dark. And Jacob set off home. He was deep in thought and contemplating all that he'd discussed today. And he missed the turnoff to his village. Deep in thought, he is wandering down the road when he comes to a Roman outpost and he hears a big voice say to him, "Halt!" He is startled and confused and wondering why someone in his home village would speak to him that way, but he soon realizes what he's done and his mistake. And then the voice says to him, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Jacob, a good rabbi, you never answer the question. You always answer the question with a question. "Sir, how much do they pay you to do the job that you are currently doing? How much do they pay you each week?" Trained as the Roman guard was to not fall for distractions, he stuck to his questions. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Jacob, trained as he was and stubborn as a Jewish rabbi can be. "Sir, how much do they pay you to do the job that you're doing now? How much do they pay you?" And eventually the Roman guard consented and he said, "Sir, I'm paid 10 denarii. And Jacob responded and said, "Sir, I will pay you twice as much to stand outside my house and ask me those same two questions every morning. Who are you and what are you doing here?" Turn to somebody and say, "He's already told us that story already." If you were here last time I spoke, I used that story as my opening, and I'm using it again today. And the question would be, why? Why would I bring it back again? Because I think the questions of who am I and what am I doing here are critical questions that we have to answer. Who are you? What are you doing here? I'm asking you those same two questions again today. Questions of identity. I want to just simply visit the first question today. Who am I? Who are you? It's the question of identity. And do you know what? You've probably answered that question already, but the problem lies in a couple of things. You don't know. You don't know you've answered that question, who am I? Because often that question has been answered, but I've answered it in my subconscious. I'm not actually really consciously going, "Oh, this is who I am," and I'm stating those facts day upon day. It's in the subconscious of my mind. The second problem with that is that, oh, I lost my track of thought. I'm coming back here. The second problem with that is that that answer to that question is maybe not healthy. It's defective. Who am I? We reach for a defective version of the story. We've got an answer, but it's not healthy. It's not useful. And yet it's running in the default settings of our mind in our subconscious, and we're living a lot of our life out of that. And at some place, at some point in time, and maybe for some of us frequently, that's going to play out in unhealthy ways, in unhelpful ways, in ways that don't bring freedom and life. It could play out like this. Who am I? Well, I'm at the core of who I am, I'm not okay. There's something wrong with who I am. There's a sense of shame in that question, who am I? And if that's the answer to that question, then I have to hide. I have to hide. If I'm not okay, there's a lot of mask wearing. There's a lot of pretense. There's a lot of trying to manage this to keep up appearances. There's a lot of building walls. There's a lot of making excuses and justifying. If I'm not okay and I'm living it out in ways that aren't okay, I make excuses for that. I can justify that. I keep things at surface level. I don't like to get deep and meaningful. I want to hide who I am because something of me is not okay. I have to manage that. I have to not get deep and meaningful. And I might use strategies to do that. I might use lots of humour. Just be the humorous one. I might be really loud. I might withdraw. It could look so different for different people. I become critical and judgmental. What I don't like about me, I actually see in others, and I become judgmental and critical in others. Or it becomes, I have to work for approval. If I'm not okay, then I'm going to earn approval however I possibly can. And so that could be, I just want a place to belong. We join an unhealthy circle of friends. We become part of risky behaviours. Or maybe it's not so extreme, but it's an unhealthy group of friends who we bond together by just being critical of other people. That gossip circle, I've seen that happen before. We have to work for the approval of others. You've got to work to keep people happy, because if they're happy, I'm okay. If they're not happy, then I'm not okay, and they're probably not okay with me. So I've got to make sure I'm keeping everybody happy around me. And that can work out in really, really plausible ways. Like I begin to serve, I begin to give, I begin to care for others, because when I do, lots of accolades, lots of thank yous, lots of acceptance, lots of value for what I'm doing for other people. Over time, that's not freedom. Over time, that takes energy to manage and to create. And if we've got that image on the screen, it's going to end up like this. The treadmill of life, you just got to pound and punch out, but eventually something is going to have to give, and you may end up face planting. Or it could look like this. My value is actually found in achieving. If I produce, I'm of value. So I must do better. I can't fail. Life is spent being busy to achieve, to prove myself. And there's fear of disapproval through lack of achievement. I can't let that happen. So I've got to work even harder still. There's negative feelings about myself and about the world when I do fail, because that's going to be inevitable. Somewhere I can't achieve all the time. It's a never-ending circle of performance. And somehow that works its way into our image of God. If I'm valued because I achieve, then God must need me to achieve for me to be valued by God. And grace becomes something that I have to earn, and I don't know how to earn it. I don't know how much I have to do to get God's grace for my life. So I'll just double down on my efforts to get there. I remember hearing years ago in Toowoomba a bloke called Duncan Armstrong speak, and a bunch of us will know who he is, and his picture will be on the board. He's the cardio tech treadmill TV guy, but he's actually a little bit more than that. Wikipedia tells me this. He's an Order of Australia medalist winner. He's a former Australian competitive swimmer, Olympic champion, former world record holder. He's best remembered for winning a gold and silver at the '88 Summer Olympics. Duncan Armstrong. And that image is online. I don't think he'd like that image online, do you? What an achiever. What a winner. A gold medalist, a former record holder. But when he told the story of his own life and the brokenness of the answer to the question, who am I? He actually said, after competitive swimming, all I knew was to achieve, was to compete. And so I would find in the social circle the strongest male. I would find who that person is, I would find what they were good at, and I would work my bum off to actually make sure I could compete with them and then beat them. That was how he lived his life. And once he'd done that, competition over, move on from that relationship. Completely destructive in his relationships, and yet an incredible achiever in life, but he couldn't build relationships with people. face plant on the treadmill stuff. Until he met a man who he deemed to be that person, the strongest in the group, and so he began to compete against him, and nothing he could do could rattle the core of this bloke. Didn't matter whether he beat him, he never got insecure, he never seemed to respond as Duncan Armstrong would imagine that he would, and eventually he asked him why. And he said, well, I'm a Christian, would you like to come to church on Sunday? Which led to the salvation experience of Duncan Armstrong. But when the story of who I am, the identity that we have comes from a faulty place, life is going to get messed up. But it's important to note these things. Not all those things are bad. Competitiveness is not bad. Using humour is not bad. So if I've just rattled your cage and made you a little bit nervous, it's like, oh, I like using humour. I do that a lot. It's okay. If you like being competitive, it's okay. Let's take competitiveness out of the state of origin. Yuck, nothing. It's okay. It's okay. So I don't want to rattle your cage. It's also important to note that if I did rattle your cage in some of that, if I just had your number and you're like, oh, hang on, that's a little bit close to my story, it's okay. Just take a deep breath and relax. And I can tell you why. Because I call it welcome to the club. Welcome to the club of humanity. There is research about all that stuff and way more of how human beings work out this problem of identity in our lives. And it's pretty well mapped out because we're all playing out in some way or other. It's okay. Welcome to the club. Welcome to humanity. It's okay. It's also important to note that there's a way out. There's a way to move past this. That doesn't have to be the answer to your story. But the fourth thing to note, do we have those things there, is lastly, it really needs you to be a major contributor to the way out. I cannot answer the question for you. I'm going to give you some thoughts today, but I cannot answer the question of who are you for you to go, this is who I am. If I'm just simply giving you an answer, you've got the answer to a question and you can pass the quiz. Good for you, but it doesn't alter the story that's going on in the default settings. We don't want to end up face planting in life. We want to do well with life. There's a way out, but I'm going to challenge you. It does mean you need to be a major contributor to that. Who are you? Who are you? So let's get back to where we were last time. And I suggested that in my story and my answer to these questions, I'm going to, Adam, who are you? And I came up with these two things, shared them last time. I am created and I am famous enough. And I want to go back to that first one and I want to add this. I am created and blessed. I am created and blessed. I love the story of the Bible. I love the story of the Bible. And here's how we tend to look at the Bible. It's a collection of books. And we open up one book, and I'm at Ecclesiastes. And we've got Luke, and we've got Romans. And we separate it. Instead of actually going, see this book like any other book on your bookcase, it's a story that runs from chapter 1 to the very last chapter of the book. There's this incredible story that runs through the entire Bible. And you know what? I shared with some young people on Thursday night. It's an epic story. And humanity loves epic stories. This is an epic story. And the epic story starts here. In the very first chapter, it introduces the first character, and his name is God. And God is uncreated. God doesn't come from anywhere. He's an uncaused cause. I know that sounds weird, but there has to be something that started it all that was uncaused. Otherwise, who made God? And if there's somebody who made God, who made that somebody that made God? And who made the somebody that made the somebody that made the somebody who made God? There has to be an uncaused cause. And I love that about God. It's okay, because doesn't an epic story have mystery? Yeah. An epic story has mystery. It has unanswered questions. If it gave it all away in the first couple of pages, we're like, boring. Isn't there mystery with God? Isn't there always mystery with God? Not just his beginnings, but there's mystery with God. And we don't like that sometimes. But what if we actually went, the mysteries of God. The mysteries of God, they're actually exciting. Genesis chapter 1, there's a God, the first character. And in the first chapter, he creates man. And the biblical story unpacks it this way. There's a God, he's uncreated, he's a creator, because when he speaks, he's not silent. When he speaks, he creates. And he creates man. And at the end of each day, imagine this. Imagine, if you will, because, ladies and gentlemen, you have an imagination. And I encourage you throughout today to be using that imagination to see some of this, of what I'm sharing. God would come down with human beings, Adam and Eve, but they're not two people over there in some story. It's humanity. It's you and me. And he would walk with them. And he would talk with them. And he would be personal with them. He would be face to face with them. Yeah. That's the biblical story. Last time I suggested that something created has value. Humanity was created. I am created. Therefore, I have value. Who am I? I'm valuable because I'm created. But God didn't leave it there. And this is the part I want to add this morning. We are created and we are blessed, because in the very opening chapter of the Bible, God blesses humanity. It's on the screen. I want to read it to you. God blessed them, and he said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." What does all that mean? Well, that's a good question. I'm not unpacking that part today. I just want to go to what's the first thing that God does with humanity? He creates and he blesses them. And not too far down the journey of this book, this epic story, in a book called Numbers, God actually instructs Moses to tell the leaders to do this. Numbers chapter 6, 22 to 26. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron and the sons, the leaders, saying, this is the way you shall bless the children of Israel. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace." The value of being created is then blessed and affirmed, and value is spoken into life, into humanity. And I wonder if you could imagine you're part of that story today. And I wonder if you could imagine that maybe it begins to start to rewrite the story of your life. And I imagine it this way because the Bible unpacks who God is. He's not just creator, he's dad, he's father. And a good father comes alongside and he says, "Man, the Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you." How good is that? Is that not identity? The Lord give you peace and be gracious to you. Sir, I bless you. The Lord blesses you and he wants to keep you. The Lord shines his face upon you to give you peace and be gracious to you. That's identity. What if God was standing in front of you and saying, "The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you peace and be gracious to you"? What if you were in that story? What if you were walking at the beginning of time with God and he said, "I bless you. I speak value. I affirm that you're not just created, off you go. I speak value into your very existence. I give you purpose. I give you meaning." And I think some people need to hear those words personally this morning. That is the blessing of God. God said to the leaders, "Moses, tell your leaders, tell the people this. This is my message to humanity. I bless you. My face is towards you." Affirmation. Insecurity was never part of the original design of creation. So God speaks affirmation to build security into your life. Because the alternative is this. In the beginning was the particle, and the particle was with God, and the particle was God. And the particle was the beginning with God. Through the particle, all things were made. And with the particle, nothing was made that has been made. In the particle was life. If that's our existence, that's so impersonal. That does not speak value. That does not speak meaning. That means we are cosmic orphans without purpose, identity, or value, if that's the original story. Who I am is created and blessed and comes directly out of the story of God. I'm famous enough, and I just want to make mention of that again. Famous enough, why? Because I'm known by God. I'm known by God, and that is through direct connection with Jesus Christ. Yeah. I am famous enough, which brings contentment to my life, but that is not because I'm happy just with me and I don't need more fame. It's because I'm connected to the living God, the resurrected King, through Jesus Christ. I don't need more fame than that. See, in my contact list is God himself. So I don't need the fame of this world. Thirdly, and I want to introduce a new thought today, is that I'm talented. Who am I? I'm talented. I just want to go on record. I am talented. And a bunch of years ago, in response to actually me underselling my talents on a regular basis and dismissing the things that have been built into my life, I bought another t-shirt. I had to buy this one. My wife got me that one for my birthday. I had to buy this one, and it had the word talented across it. So I would wear that round. And I decided one Sunday, another church, that I would wear it. And before the service even started, a bloke came up to me and referred to my t-shirt. He said, "Adam, are you even saved?" I'm like, "Thanks, man, I appreciate that. Really, that doesn't hurt me at all." But he was questioning whether my declaration of being talented was a little bit arrogant. And maybe if I was arrogant, maybe I don't know what salvation and humility is. I don't know. But I would define myself by what I was not. I don't have that gift. I can't do what that person can do. That person, amazing gift, I don't have that gift. And within 2 weeks, 2 different friends actually said to me, "Adam, you define yourself by what you're not." Who am I? Well, I'm not that, and I'm not that. That's a really poor way to define my identity. And so in response to that, I bought a t-shirt that said, "I'm talented." And really, I don't see arrogance in that statement because it's scriptural. 4 times in the New Testament, Ephesians 4, verse 7 says this: "He has given each one of us a special gift through the generosity of Christ." In Romans 12, "In his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well." In 1 Corinthians 12, verse 7, "A spiritual gift is given to each of us so we can help each other." 1 Peter 4, "God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts." 4 times in the New Testament. And each of those passages, if you want to go and look them up, are about the gifts that God has given humanity. God has given me talents. And so today, I prefer to talk myself up instead of talking myself down. And it looks like this. When people say I do a good job, in the past, I used to dismiss it. If I didn't dismiss it to their face, I'd say thank you. But internally, I'm going, yeah, whatever. It's not really a big deal. But when someone says, "Adam, well done," I'll go, "Thank you." But I actually like to be a little provocative now. And when they say, "Adam, that was a good job," I'll actually answer with, "Yes, it was." Because I'm trying to be provocative. "You did a good job." "Yes, I did." Ange told me this morning I look cute. I just agreed with her. Delicious, I'm still working on. But she told me I look cute. Guess what? I'm going to agree with you now. If you think I look cute, fantastic. Because it's better than the alternative of talking yourself down. You look cute. "Oh, no, I'm ugly. You don't know me, I'm ugly." Well, choose that life if you want, but I prefer to talk myself up. I'm actually talented. It's biblical. I have gifts and abilities that have been given to me. And it's been a fun journey discovering what they are and then using them and then trying to use them well and better and grow in them. It's actually brought meaning and purpose to my life because I've admitted that part of my identity is talented. It brings freedom. It brings freedom from comparison because I heard this phrase a bunch of years ago, when you compare, you always lose. I don't need to compare myself to your talents. Why on earth would I do that? Well, maybe because I'm insecure. But once I've found security and I identify what I'm good at, guess what? I'll bring to the table what I am supposed to bring to the table. I'll use my gift well. And in those passages, if you go and read them, you'll find because you're supposed to bring to the table. God's design in you is for you to bring your stuff to the table, your talents, your abilities. And that's called the body of Christ. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I don't need to compare myself. There's freedom from that. I don't need to be the one that has all the answers. There's less pressure to be that. I know what I do know and I don't know. I know what I don't know. And if you're going to bring that, then I'm not going to be insecure about that. That's okay. So there's less pretense and more authenticity. The last one is this. Who am I? I am 110% dependent. 110% dependent. The gifts that I have, I can tell you that I'm talented because they were the gift of God. There's no arrogance in that. I am talented because God graced me with certain gifts. I'm dependent on that. I am known by God. I am connected by God. I am famous enough, and that brings contentment to my life because of Jesus Christ. Because there is a resurrected King who actually took away all my rubbish, all my sin, all my baggage, and now I stand guilt and shame free, and I'm connected to him. And I choose to believe that story, but I'm totally dependent on that story. And the epic story begins with creation. With the world coming into being, I don't have breath in my lungs unless there's a God who gives it to me, who gives me the very next breath, the very next day, the sunrise tomorrow. I am 100% dependent. And that's why I love the story of God, because it starts to change my very identity. Can we stand together? I wonder if you would just close your eyes. And I know I've gone some places that might have been a little personal today. And I don't apologize for that. Because as I was standing here worshiping this morning, I just went, this is the gospel. This is the gospel. That all that was lost, the security that was lost from the original design, Jesus came to bring that back to your life this morning. And this is just the little moment where you go, God, I need you to come in and rearrange the internal story of my life. And if that's you this morning, I just want you to just raise your hand and I want to pray for you. I want to pray for you. If you know something of your identity keeps making life like a treadmill, then just raise your hand and I'm going to pray for you this morning. Thank you. Thank you. There's hands going up all over the auditorium this morning. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Don't be ashamed. Welcome to the club. It's your moment to intersect with God here this morning. Take that moment. I'm going to pray for you. Jesus, I thank you that you are truth that comes alive in our hearts. God, keep us from knowing the answers, but the answer doesn't penetrate into our very core, into our soul, into our heart. I thank you, God, that the truth would come alive. For those who've raised their hands that are reaching out to you, would there be moments where the truth The aha moments come alive in not just their mind, but in their spirit and soul. And God, you bring freedom. You bring new identity. You bring life that is free of the treadmill. God, I thank you. I thank you that new identities would be formed, even in this week, even in this moment. Thank you for your work, Holy Spirit. And while our eyes are closed, I don't know your story, and I've shared a little story this morning, and maybe you know that you have never ever connected to the story of God. And it begins with just accepting that Jesus is the way through to God. All your past can be removed. But you know you're standing here this morning, and I've never started that journey. I've never entered the story of God, and something within you is going, today's my day. Today's the moment. And I'm just going to ask you to be so very courageous and to raise your hand this morning and say, that's me. I want to enter the story of God today. Is there anybody here while eyes are closed? Would you just be so bold as to raise your hand? Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Is there anybody else? We're only taking a moment, but this is your moment. This is your moment. Thank you. Thank you. I see that hand there. Love it. The start of a new journey, a new identity. Well, thank you. You may open your eyes, and it begins with just a simple prayer, but we pray this not as mere words, but actually what we believe to be true, and we're putting our faith in this. So let's pray together. Dear Jesus, I believe in you. Thank you for forgiving me. Come into my life, and I will follow you. Amen.